This is the Blender interface. In the interface, you have multiple windows. You can change the content of any of those windows by clicking the drop-down menu that is on the top left corner. On the top of Blender, you have different interface presets that are made to accomplish certain tasks. For this tutorial, we will stay in Layout. This is the 3D viewport. This is where you will pass the most of your time 3D modeling. It lets you navigate in 3D, select object, and modify them. To the left of the 3D viewport, you have access to different tools. On the top left corner, different modes and menus. On the top right corner, different views. So wireframe, solid, material, and render. You also have a quick access to navigation and quick access to specific axes in your scene. The top right window is the outliner. In the outliner, you have collections. In those collections, you have the different objects in your scene. You can select your object, make them visible or not in this window. Under the outliner, you have the properties window. This lets you have access to properties that are specific to your scene or objects. The bottom window is the timeline. The timeline is made for animation. We will explore it later this semester. To navigate in Blender, you need to be able to rotate, pan, and zoom. To zoom, you just have to roll your middle mouse button forward or backward. To rotate, you have to click on your middle mouse button. And to pan, you can press Shift and click on your middle mouse button, or use the End tool. You also have access to all of those operations in the top right corner of the viewport. When you select an object, there are two very different modes that we can use: the object mode and the edit mode. The object mode is made to manage your scene, to add multiple objects, to scale them generally, to have your access to cameras and lights. The edit mode is made to modify the object. It's like a workbench. You have access to different tools in object mode and in edit mode. You can see that there are way more tools in edit mode than in object mode. You don't want to modify your object too much in object mode, but you can do some modification. If we go look at the tools, you have the select tool that you can change for a circle tool, a lasso, or a tweak. There are also selection modes up top. Under there, you have the move tool. Every tool gives you access to 3 axes, X, Y, and Z. If you click on the specific arrow of this tool, it will transform your object only on this axis. If you click on the middle circle, it will transform freely on all three axes. So transform lets you move your object. You have the rotation tool that lets you rotate your object, again, in 3 separate axes or freely. And you have the scale tool that lets you scale your object, again, on specific axis or freely. If you want to modify an object, you need to select it in object mode and then go to edit mode. Edit mode is where you're going to do all of the modifications on the object. There are 3 very important little buttons on the top of your viewport display in edit mode. The first one is vertices, that lets you select individual vertices. Edges, that lets you select individual edges. And face, that lets you select individual faces. With your vertice, edge, or face selected, you now have access to different tools. The first ones are identical to the object mode tools. You can move your face, rotate it, and scale it. This is also true for edges, and to move vertices. To create more complex objects in 3D, we need to add geometry. We're going to see 4 different tools that lets us do that. First one is the extrude tool. You should always use the extrude tool with the face selection. When you select the extrude tool, you have access to this little plus sign with a direction. If you click and drag, you're going to be able to extrude faces, which creates more geometry. The second tool under extrude that could be very useful to create geometry is the insert tool. Insert tool lets you insert faces inside of faces. You can use it with the extrude tool to create faces that get out of faces in an inserted way. The bevel tool lets you bevel the edges of the face that you've selected by clicking on the yellow circle that appears. When you do this type of operation, there's a little drop up menu on the bottom that lets you have access to your bevel tool. Here you can change the width, the segments, and other things in the bevel tool. Be careful to always use even numbers in segments. The last tool we're going to see is the loop cut. The loop cut lets you create a cut that loops around your geometry. You can use it to create new geometry and also use it with other tools to modify parts of your model. Have fun blendering.